multiply something by 1, it doesn't change the answer. Now that seems like something you should know, that if you multiply something by 1, you don't get a new answer. But sometimes we can multiply by 1 and change what our answer looks like. And we've seen that with fractions when you need to get a common denominator, right? You could have 3/5. I can multiply the top and bottom by 4 over 4, which is just multiplying by 1. It changes how it looks to be 12 over 20, but doesn't change what it's equal to. And that is very helpful for adding and subtracting fractions. Okay? Now, we are going to find out that in mathematics, mathematicians don't like to have square roots on the bottom of fractions. So if you have something like 1 over the square root of 2, they're going to consider that not simplified. And the history behind this is because before calculators, you could, using very painful techniques, take 1 and divide it by the square root of 2, and it might only take you 3 hours to get an answer. Beautiful. But if you change it to the square root of 2 over 2, it only takes you an hour to get the answer. So it's much better without a calculator to do something that only takes an hour compared to something that takes 3 hours. So this would be considered more simplified than 1 over root 2. A little bit silly now that we have calculators, because if I want to get an answer for this, it doesn't matter. I can type it in my calculator either way, push enter, and get an answer instantaneously. So it's not saving me hours of work anymore. In fact, it used to be that maybe your grandparents, when they went to school in math, they had to figure out how to do the square root of 2 by hand. They've stopped teaching that for at least 40 years. So it's something that's no longer in the curriculum. You no longer have to figure out square roots by hand. If that intrigues you, look it up on YouTube. You can find out how to do it, right, by hand. And then you can impress your siblings because they probably don't know how to do it. And then you're like, okay. All right. So we consider, and I want you to highlight something, we call this whole process, oh, my highlighter's not working, rationalizing the denominator. So I'm eventually going to highlight this word right there without a black circle, so I wanted to use a highlighter. There we go. Maybe. Whoa, I hit the wrong button. I just deleted that whole page. That's okay. You saw it long enough to highlight that word. We call this idea that if you have a square root on the bottom, we call it rationalizing the denominator. So when we go to our example here, hopefully I had enough time to highlight that word. Now, we have a square root of 7 on the bottom. This is considered not simplified. We need to get rid of square roots on the bottom in order to simplify. And the way that we do that is we multiply by 1. If I want to get rid of a square root on the bottom, what possibly could I put inside this square root to make this a perfect square? A 7. That's pretty obvious. And then you'd have to multiply the top by root 7, which means you're going to have to distribute. So on the top, this root 7 gets multiplied there and there. And we're going to get 5 times 1 is 5. Root 7 times root 7, you can write root 49, but I hope you're going to see that that's just going to be 7. Then 3 times 1 will be 3. And root 7 is the only root in the second. Divided by, and root 7 times root 7 is 7. I can put 5 times 7 together. I get 35 plus 3 root 7. Those are not like terms. I can't combine them. Divided by 7. This will be my final answer. and considered the simplified form because I no longer have a square root on the bottom. Mathematically, this might take you 2 days without a calculator to get 5 decimal places, and this one only a day and a half. Whew. Very nice. Okay? Of course, with a calculator, it doesn't matter how it's written, your calculator, if you type it in correctly, will tell you the right answer. If you type it in wrong, I will guarantee your calculator will also tell you a wrong answer. So sometimes we have to be careful when typing things into our calculators. Next one, we have 6 root 2 minus 4 root 3, and we have a root 18 on the bottom. Wow. I'm going to do this one in 2 different ways, and you can decide which way you like better. I'm going to do the way that most students would initially do first. So, if you want to get rid of the square root of 18 on the bottom, what do you think I should multiply the bottom by? Square root of 18. That makes logical sense. So this works out well. Put this in brackets. I'm going to have to distribute, and I'm going to get root 2 times root 18 is root 36. Can you see that that's just going to be 6? Second number is 4 times 1 would be negative 4, and root 3 times root 18, root 54 over 18 on the bottom. So now I have 36 minus 4 root 54 over 18. Am I done? No. This is not in lowest terms. It is not in lowest terms for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is you have a square root. Is this in lowest terms as a mixed radical? No. 54 is 9 times 6. So I can change that. I can change that to 36 minus, since it's 9 times 6, the square root of 9 is 3. 3 times the 4 makes negative 12 root 6 over 18. So now we've changed our radical to lowest form. So are we simplified? No. We're not simplified because in your numerator, you have a common factor. You can pull out a 12. A 12 is in common. So some people like to do it this way. I pull out the 12. This would leave me with 3 minus root 6 over 18. And then the 12/18 is a fraction. That's not in lowest terms. I can reduce that by dividing them both by 6. Leaving me with 2/3. So my final answer has a 3 on the bottom. I can either leave it in factored form or like this. Okay. Method 2, and we got a minute. So I start off with the same question. 6 root 2 minus 4 root 3 over the square root of 18, but I changed the square root of 18 because it can be simplified to 3 root 2. Then to get rid of my square root, all I would need is to multiply by root 2 and root 2. Distributing this will give me 6 times 2 is 12, and minus 4 root 6. And on the bottom, I have 6. I notice a common factor that I can divide everything by 2. Simplifying first, if you can, sometimes makes your life a little bit easier. Questions for practice on this one are 6, 9, 13i and II,